Hello, everyone. I'd like to call to order the monthly report from the Assembly's SAP Independent Contractor. Let's go around the table and introduce ourselves for the record, and we'll start with this young man standing up over here.
Zig Burson, ZCO Consulting.
Mike Chadwick, Internal Audit.
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
Dick Trainee, Assembly.
Elvie Gray Jackson.
John Robinson, Tim Steele.
Bill Evans.
Third.
And the gentleman in the audience, please.
Oh, Ken
Yeah,
White
you.
with SAP.
Thank you. And over here. And there's two folks in the back, so would you like to introduce yourself? What's your name?
What's your name?
I'm Cher. He's on the website name for Ms. Gray Jackson and Ms. Christina.
And the other young lady? Thank you. Ms. Dombrowski, are you still on the line?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, so Ms. Dombrowski is on the line. Thank you. Okay, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for the time, Assembly members, I appreciate it. This is our typical monthly report. This is the agenda. We're just going to talk a little bit about exactly the position of where the project is, talk a little bit about the master plan, which is now getting much closer to being finished. The progress of the project, a little bit about governance, staffing, the running costs, which is something we talk about every week. And then we'll look at the project cost overall, and then we'll give you an update on our critical success factors and then give you some of our conclusions in terms of the outlook of the project. So the project position, I think it's good news that we have finished the blueprint, and the realization phase is moving forward and moving forward well. I just thought I'd list for you what are all the activities that go on in the realization phase. It has a tendency, because it's so long, it's laid out there to last from now until October. But there's a lot of activity there. I mean, if you may recall, we talked about all those documents that are being reviewed in the blueprint. There's about 1,000 of them. They tend to refer to those as objects, but that means that they're actually going to be doing some configuration of those 19 modules. That the RICEF, you'll hear this term on and on, which represents the workflows, the reports, the interfaces, the conversions, enhancements, and forms. So those are the things that right now folks are, in essence, generating functional specifications for those. That's what's going on. As soon as those are finished, reviewed, and approved, we'll talk some more about that. You go into technical specifications so that can be turned over to literally the technical folks who then do the development work, the programming work, and the configuration work, which is covered in configuration and development. And then lastly, each of those folks need to, in essence, test what they're doing. This is not the back-end testing. This is unit testing that goes on with each of the individuals that are doing the development work. We okay? So a lot of activity right now. This, you just saw this, Alden showed this to you, kind of restated a little bit because I didn't think it was necessary to talk about the blueprint anymore, so hopefully you can see this a little better as we kind of move forward. The initiation, in essence, is finished. There's still some open items, but essentially it's finished. Functional specs are being developed. There's some technical specs are starting up already, and I think on the whole, we're in great shape. Slightly behind, slightly ahead, on schedule. Yeah. Moot point. The bottom line is we're in pretty good shape. Okay, change management activities. I really want to kudos to the mayor. The mayor is being very visible. We talked about the need for a change champion. He's doing it. I mean, that's excellent. He stopped in yesterday at one of the departmental meetings. I'm pretty sure he's going to be stopping in at the combined ESC and FSC meeting this afternoon. So this is quite good. The project's executive sponsor. So we added Alden's name here because there are some new folks on the assembly. So we want to make sure we were identifying folks appropriately, so you know who we're talking about. But he's going around personally and conducting briefings with the various departments, and they're really trying to get as many people throughout the city, throughout the municipality, to basically hear the story. And so I think that's a great move forward, and I think as we just heard, it's coming along well. there's not a lot of negatives, but I do think it's important to recognize that there is a common thread. And that common thread is people are interested in time reporting, payroll. No surprise, no surprise. I mean, that's what touches them.
Right.
And I think that's been consistent, at least I've heard it's been consistent, and I've attended 2 of them myself. And there's no question, they ask questions about time reporting and pay. So, not a surprise. But again, a good thing. This is the chart, one of the charts, it's been paraphrased slightly, but it is one of the charts that Alden uses, and it shows the sort of the major milestones and the movement through the year type of thing, and it lets people know when the major activities are going to be taking place, because in many cases it's going to affect them. And so there'll be people involved with the user acceptance testing. When they start the training 3 months prior to launch, there'll be a lot of people attending a lot of sessions, and they'll also be doing an awful lot of work on the web and so forth. So, a very valuable piece of information that's being passed to, in essence, to everybody in the municipality as we go through these briefings over the next month. Is that about right, all next month? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the master plan. The project initiation stage of work or phase of work was focused on, let's get this plan ready to go. So we know what we're going to be doing when and where. This is sort of the structure of the plan. So at the very top, we've got the master. That's on the left-hand side. That's the master plan where everything links and ties together. And then it's subdivided into phases. Okay, we've already talked about the fact that you saw this horizontally. The initiation phase is on the far left. It's the first few weeks. Realization is the long one. That's the one that's going on right now, started on April the 11th, and is targeted to complete in October. Okay? After you do the realization, which in essence is the building of the system, you've got to do an awful lot of get ready for going live, which includes the testing and the testing is part of realization. Excuse me. But it's preparing and the training and that sort of thing going on and preparing for going live, and then lastly, go live support is when you're turning on the system, and that's targeted for sometime spring, early summer of 2017. And the reason why that is a little uncertain is that the project, the system needs to go live on the beginning of a quarter. So it's either April 1 or it's July 1. Okay? The actual contract, the SAP contract, the 55 weeks, takes us near the end of April. Okay? And so then you can see we've got the realization is broken into, basically the build cycle under phase segments, and then the testing. Okay? And then then they break those into sub-plans, and so you can see the realization has several sub-plans, and they are basically grouped by HCM, which is human resources, if you will, Philo, which is all the financial components, the actual technical development, that's going to end up being an awful lot of folks offshore, okay? And then the testing, and then throughout all of this is the organization change management, or OCM. Okay? Questions about that?
I don't see any. Please continue.
Okay. So just want to highlight, just want to let you know, there's still a couple of open items on the project initiation. The main one is going to happen this afternoon when the contractors are going to present their data management strategy. That's still an open item, so therefore the plan for that is not included. Also, Philo, the financial team, as you may recall, SAP told us that the financial piece was 80% complete back in February of 2015. So here we are today. Now these folks are trying to go forward and get this built again, but we need to make sure we don't reinvent the wheel. So they are looking very carefully at every document and every program that's been actually completed a year ago, so that they can now make sure that it's valid, it matches the blueprint. But that's slowing down their ability to finish the plan, because they're trying to resolve what is actually left for them to do. Make sense? Also, in the development side, which is, getting more into the development of technical specs and actual coding and so forth, there are some pieces that are missing in that right now that's being worked. So I know that there is a draft now of a plan for how to actually complete the interfaces that are coming from existing systems to SAP. So that piece is still being planned, but that's not there. Also, as I understand it, the SAP contract is calling for a certain set of reports that they're going to generate. That's fine, but that's not quite all the reports. And so there's this issue right now of trying to figure out how many more reports need to be done, and that's not in the plan. Okay? So,
Excuse me one moment. Did you have your hand up, Mr. Steele?
No, it's just,
Wait, thank you.
Yeah.
Please continue.
So in terms of trying to get the master plan ready, finished, complete, and in a situation where you can continue to move forward, we had some recommendations for some, if you will, sub-projects that should be developed. Some of these are already done. In other words, there is a plan for implementing the ECM, the Enterprise Content Management component that you approved that particular line item, I believe, Tuesday night. Same thing with CABA, which is the time reporting. You approved that Tuesday night. The planning, in essence, what needs to be done has, to my knowledge, has been completed. So those are done. And I think I just mentioned to you that the planning for the interfaces that are still left to do is in process. That's going to be finished next week, certainly should be. And then the gap analysis that's going on, the discussions with regard to the difference between SAP's statement of work and the blueprint, those are the gaps that are being discussed. Apparently those reports are part of that gap analysis. So that's kind of where those stand. So what's the progress of the project? I think it's important to know that they are reporting in progress, they're paying attention to it. The project management office meeting occurs every Wednesday. That's right. Get all my meetings wound up. So Wednesday, and so this is the overall summary in the actual project management office meeting where all the team leaders, all the project managers get together and they're basically talking about where are we. So this is where the project team says you are. I mean, you're slightly yellow, which is everything's okay. We just need to keep paying attention to it. That's what, caution needs to be watched. There is possible impact if not corrected. So a couple of line items there, if you see on the far right-hand side, which are basically the OCM team, and is slightly needs to be watched. Everything else is in green status, but overall we're slightly yellow. There is a major issue. Okay, the team is becoming concerned, rightfully so, that the Muni may be falling into the same trap that it fell into with the blueprint review and approvals. Okay? So this is a list of the functional specs that have been prepared, have been turned over to Muni personnel, Muni subject matter experts, and Muni business process owners for approval. Okay? So highlighted 5 of them out there. You can see there's a total of 34 here, which are awaiting review and approval. 29 were actually due they were due last week, so that's during the week when several of the folks were out of town at the SAP National Conference. Pretty understandable. If they're still there next week, I'd raise a flag. Okay? But there are 5, though, that actually were due before the conference. Okay? Now, the thing that's important to note is that the Muni agreed with SAP and with project management, we will review and approve everything that you give us in 3 business days. I'm pretty sure that that's probably in SAP's contract. Is that it?
No,
Not in the
that's not
contract?
contractual. I mean, that was just kind of.
Okay, but it is definitely something
There was
that.
an expectation that they built on the project.
Okay. So they said 3 business days. Well, I added 3 business days, including the weekends, to go past the weekends to come up with those dates. So you can see, 5 of those functional specs were due before the conference, so they're yellow and tan, or purple, or whatever color you want to call that. But those 2 at the bottom are now almost 2 weeks late. That's the trap. I mean, the history is that there was a significant issue about this during the blueprint. It dragged blueprint out probably almost a month. All right? So I'm hoping that everybody will start paying attention and start waving the flag and saying, hey, we need to get this done. Because those are pretty soon going to fall on the critical path. And when they fall on the critical path, then all of a sudden technical specs are not going to get done. And then technical specs for that item is not going to get done. Then programming is not going to get done. And the whole thing starts pushing. Okay? So, again, maintaining progress reporting. The executive steering committee is receiving a dashboard. They're receiving, 8 to 10 page report. I haven't seen it. I do get a copy of one page out of it, and this is sort of a recast of what they're talking about and what they're being told. Okay, so the schedule's in pretty decent shape in terms of how what's being reported to the ESC. But it does say, oh, by the way, we've got this whole data management thing going on that's going to be happening this afternoon, and that the result of that is going to be some changes to the master plan. Okay. In terms of scope, it's yellow, and again, it's highlighting here what we just talked about, which is the fact that we've got this gap analysis happening between SAP's contract and what the blueprint says. And then as far as issues, yes, before the issue was, gee, we need to get the assembly to approve ECM and CABA, but now that it's been done, we need to update the plan. Okay? So that's what's going on there. So what are the overall concerns? The master plan doesn't have the MOA interface activity in it yet. It's in process. I worry about it because once it's there, it's going to tell the organization how many technology resources we're going to need and when in order to accomplish the interfaces. There's probably going to be a shortfall, and if there is a shortfall of resources, then the community is going to have to find those technology resources, get them on board, and so that's going to be a timeline that you need to concern yourself with. Okay? The gap analysis that we've already talked about. I think the bottom line on this is if all of those gaps were to be accepted, it's going to be a sizable amount of money, and it's going to represent a change order. So we need to recognize that that's sitting out there. Now, I don't think the community is going to accept all of them by any means. Okay, I don't think they're going to want to pay for all of them. But some of them may. So I'm just simply saying that some of them are going to come floating up and eventually be a change order. We need to be aware of that. Yes, sir.
Mr. Reynolds?
Significant amount of money is very relative. 10 million or?
Oh, no. I don't think it'd be near that. No. I would guess it's going to be somewhere, I'm guessing. But first of all, I know this for a fact. I have been told that of the 27 line items, if you do all of them, each line item alone is larger than Alden's approval level. So he can approve $10,000. Okay? The rest of them have to go to the executive steering committee. So if you take, let's say 20 of them and they're all $15,000, okay? Then you end up at somewhere between $1 and $2 million.
Anything else? Thank you. Mr. Stern, I was going to wait until Zig is finished before I ask you for any comments. Is that okay? That's fine. Okay, thank you. Please continue.
Let's remember this conversation so that we don't miss it. I don't forget these things.
I didn't think you did.
Well, he knows a lot more about the details of that than I do.
Yeah. Please continue.
Okay, so the review and approval of functional specs is on the critical path for completing the technical specs and then obviously the development. So all I'm trying to do here is urge the administration that they need to talk to their folks and say, come on, let's get these done. And they need to meet that 3 business day expectation. I mean, they set it themselves. Okay, as far as governance is concerned, just a couple of changes. The functional steering committee, which used to meet weekly, is now meeting every other week. The business process owner committee now meets every other week. Those two committees are very close to being identical in terms of who the people are. And so in essence, those people are meeting every week, but they are offset every other week. Okay, the functional steering committee and the executive steering committee are now meeting monthly jointly. And this afternoon, I believe, is a joint meeting, which is a good thing. I mean, but that was, the functional steering committee really wanted to have some access to the executive steering committee. Staffing, this continues to be here. We really don't have staffing for the data management side. And I think a lot of that is because we're waiting for the strategy document that's going to be discussed this afternoon. Okay, OCM, Organization Change Management, there's been a manager over that for several months, but that person has been alone. That person now has one additional person. That's good, except that it took a long time to get that person. And now all that does is make you wonder how long is it going to take to get the rest of his 3 to 4 or 5 people. Okay, and an asset management subject matter expert has been defined. That was a shortfall we talked about last week, and that's good. Running costs, you've seen this. It's in every weekly report. I don't have the last week of April. The individual that does that has been pretty ill, so that's caused that issue. But that's going to happen. I mean, they're going to catch up. I mean, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Hold on for a moment.
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
I just wondered, are you recording budgeted or actual?
These are actuals.
Okay.
This information is coming off of the timesheets and the expense reports that the consultants turn in every week.
Let me just kind of clarify just exactly. This is not what's been invoiced. They put their hours in the project track. We know what their hourly rate is. We say we believe that that's what it was for that particular week. We know whether or not they travel or not, so we put a yes to that. That has a hypothetical or anticipated percentage that goes to that. It's not actually what it will be invoiced, but it's as close as we can get to what actually occurred the prior week based on the travel and the expenditures that we have.
And we're going to talk some more about that, because that's coming up. I do think it's important to note that there probably will be some reclassification of fees and expenses due to the way that SAP is doing their billing and their invoicing. So a lot of detail involved with that, but the bottom line that I tried to make sure I understood, and we've had this conversation, bottom line is that reclassification will be a net zero effect. So what I'm getting at is that we will right now continue to see a $300,000, round figure, $300,000 weekly run rate until we start adding a lot more consultants, as Alden mentioned to you not more than an hour ago. It's going to start climbing.
Okay, I have a question. I thought that you said that the weekly run rate hasn't changed because the person who does this is out the out.
I said I don't have the April 30 report,
Okay.
Nor the ones in May.
Right, because I read all your reports.
Yeah, that person has not been available to do that. Okay.
But now I hear you saying that this isn't going to change.
Only, I'm talking about the reclassification. So,
Oh, okay.
so in other words, if the fees go up $5,000 and the expenses go down $5,000, I'm still going to end up at a zero change in terms of where they are right now. And certainly from a trend perspective, I'm pretty sure that we're going to see April 30th and the reports from May are all going to probably be right around $300,000.
That's good to know. Thank you. Please.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You.
So let's talk about project cost. We've reported this to you before. The way to kind of look at this thing, the major components are contractor payments, MOA staff charges, software purchases, hardware purchases, and other. Okay, that's basically what's been summarized and captured and from PeopleSoft over the last pick a number, 14 months, 12 months, whatever the case may be. So I've listed up here the summary totals from 12/31/15. So that tells you how much has actually been reported out of PeopleSoft, which is your financial system, as of 12/31/15. Then I start tracking these things by month. All right, I start tracking by month, so you can see January through April, or that's where we are so far. That's all we've got. And then I summarize the spending to date. So that's taking those 4 months and adding them to the 12/31. So you now have what's the spending to date coming out of PeopleSoft. And then current year spending is the next column. So we're just adding January, February, March, April. And then the last column says, well, wait a minute, this contract started, the big one, the one you approved for 22 million or something like that, that started in April. So I basically am just adding, I'm going to be adding April, May, and so forth. So right now that only has April in it, okay? Now, that's going to be slightly off because I think the contract started April 11th instead of, so you got 10 days buried in there. I don't think that's big enough to make a difference. So there's where you are. So I saw some anomalies, and I talked about this a couple of months ago. If you look at that line of staff charges, all of a sudden it goes to 0. So the question becomes, well, where are the charges for the MOA staff? Okay? And then payments to contractors are noticeably less than what's been reported. If you recall, the weekly run rate is running right around 300,000. The source of that is the timesheets, project track, timesheets and expense reports of the contractors. Not invoiced, not paid by PeopleSoft, paid and reported in PeopleSoft. So you look at that and you say, well, wait a minute. I've got 400,000 for the month of January, I got 400,000 for the month of February, and I got 400,000 for the month of April. Yes, I've got a big number in March, so there's been some catch-up done, but I'm still short. Okay, in terms of understanding what the total project costs on a reasonably in terms of the actual timeline that you're on. Okay, you together? So, took a look at that, and it's my understanding, I asked about it, and basically, apparently, as an example, Peloton hasn't really provided any expense invoices since February. So there's one reason why some of the numbers are low. In terms of what's being paid, SAP has not been paid since January due to hours and expenses receipt billing issues. There are some issues apparently going on, discussions going on, in terms of either reclassification or accuracy or completeness or whatever the case may be. But the point is billings to SAP to the tune of 800 to $1 million every month haven't been paid since January because of the discussions that are going on about that. So in essence, we're understated. Okay? So why haven't MOA charges been posted? So it is my understanding, and I got this information from the controller, is that cost transfers have been identified. People know, they've tracked them, that's not an issue. So we know that there's about $250,000 worth of accumulated charges for MOA personnel up through 3/31. So we've got the number. Apparently there are some discussions as to exactly how to handle it, how to fund it, whatever. The point is everybody's waiting to find out how to get that charge. Alden's sitting there saying, give me the numbers when you got them. So we should have them, certainly in my mind. We should have them so that you've got a better picture of what's being spent on the project on a more timely basis. Any questions on that part?
Doesn't look like it. Please
Okay.
continue.
So the bottom line is we're running about 300,000 because we're missing April 30th. I'm short 300,000 for 1 week's worth of run rate. So that's numbered 1 up there. Okay, so it should be $300,000 more. Project cost to date, basically we're running about $2 million today, under. Okay, understated. Okay, so when you sit there and say, how much have we spent current year to date, it should say 5.5 million. Actually, it should say 5.8 because that 300,000 that's missing. Okay? And current budget cost to date is under, that's a $500,000. That's against the 22 million. Okay? Questions on that? Okay. We're just suggesting that some kind of accrual or some kind of tracking, some kind of method, whether it can even be done like this, completely off book. It's not in PeopleSoft, but at least it gives you a better picture of where you are. Because you sure don't want to end up at the end of this project and all of a sudden have to do a reconciliation 6 months later. So critical success factors. If you recall, we did this last month, basically said, how are we doing on all those critical success factors? This is just a repeat. Okay, we're going to, and so basically if we get, A's and B's, that's great. What I think is interesting though is, one of them was don't repeat history. That was one of the critical success factors. Real concern about the review and approval process. And that, hopefully the lesson's been learned. Hopefully everybody says, oh, we really need to get these things approved. We can't let them sit around. So that to me is a repeat of what went on in January and February. And then the item 6 says, don't cut off your nose and spite your face. There's a lot of activity trying to control the SAP contract, trying to keep it minimized, trying to keep it smaller. That's great. But now all of a sudden we're finding out that we're potentially faced with some change orders because there's a difference between the SAP statement of work and the blueprint.
Mr. Harris, did you have a question or are you just waving? Okay. Please continue.
So that's the reason why, still saying that that's something to think about. Then this becomes, did I go the wrong way? No, that's okay. So this is now the more recent ones. Again, pretty good shape there. Number 11 says, plan for post go live. That's all about get ready. And this is a little early, and everybody says we don't need to worry about it. But I think how the difficulties of getting SAP talented personnel as employees in your IT department is not going to be easy. But you're going to have something like that when you go live. You're going to have people, and you got to start thinking about how you're going to get them. So that's why that one's a D. Okay, new critical path or critical success factor. So, we've talked about this quite a few times, is the whole idea of a critical path and making sure you understand the critical path. So you recognize and know that if something starts delaying early, it very well have an impact at the back end. All right? So we try to kind of make sure we define what the critical path is. It's a sequence of events that dictate how long it'll take to finish the project. Those, when you start doing, IT projects, there is a sequence. There's no question there's a sequence, and we saw it earlier. Functional specs, technical specs, programming, testing. They exist. The thing that makes things complex is volume. You've got 1,000 objects out there where you got to go through functional spec, technical spec, development, testing. Okay? It becomes very difficult to pay attention to that much detail. And that's all in Ken's bailiwick. He's got all that stuff. Okay? Now, but it would be nice if you could automate that, okay? It would be nice if you could start connecting these various pieces automatically so that it would ripple any kind of major effect to the project endpoint. Okay? And I think we talked about this quite a few months ago when we talked about, oh gee, if you delay the whole payroll, not the payroll, but the timekeeping decision, if you delay that, where is it going to have an effect at the back end and push the project out? Same thing with the pause. If you remember, the pause pushed things up because everybody kept overlooking the fact that, oh, by the way, when you pause, when you start back up again, it's going to take time. And it did, 2 months? Something like that. You got to go find people. That's the problem here in Alaska. Now, we also need to recognize that that path can be driven by either schedule or elapsed time. Okay, so what needs to happen? We need to identify task dependencies, establish a precedence network, and we need to identify buffers for those tasks. Okay. And you'll notice I'm talking about tasks, I'm not talking about phases. We all know phases go in order, and they're actually shown to you in a certain order. This gets a little more detailed. Okay, so an example, and I think we just talked about this example. So what's our overall outlook? I've just underlined these words up here so that I can kind of find them on the screen. Realization is progressing reasonably well. Okay, now the exception is the potential slowdown due to the review and approval process. I'm only worried about that because the unity's done it before. Okay? The scope of work is in flux, and I say that because that whole gap analysis has not been resolved, and it does represent potential changes to the scope of work. Okay? And those are additions. Now, whether or not that can be absorbed between now and go live, that would be up to the team in terms of how they generate the detailed plan. We need to provide staffing for the organizational change management team. It's a concern if it requires as much time to fill the rest of the positions as it did to fill the first one. It took months. We're talking about a training specialist, not an SAP technician. Given the potential for difficulty in obtaining technically qualified staff for developing the interfaces, staffing needs need to be identified in that detailed plan, and it should be done as soon as possible because there's going to be lead time issues in trying to find staff to help. That's the story, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Zimboski, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zimboski. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just overall, the thing that jumped out at me was back on page 9, when you're talking about the development work plan, and there's 4,800 tasks involved. That's a really large number to me.
Project plan is over 12,000?
Yeah, the whole plan is like 12,000. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. I'm trying, there it is. Okay. Whoops. Down. So yeah, I didn't mention that, but I did want everybody to see how much is involved here. Okay, so project initiation is 90 tasks. Okay, human capital is over 4,000. The one that I said is not quite finished yet because they're trying to do this whole validation and verification. Their number of tasks is only 600, and that's on the finance side. So there's more to be done there. Okay, development work plan is at 4,800. Whole testing thing. There's going to be more in testing as we know more. Okay, I mean, so that I don't think there's any chance it's going to stay at 350. And OCM, that may very well. That's not too far off, probably. But yeah, there's a lot of tasks, a lot of activities. This is what Ken and his team is focusing on. I mean, constantly. They're updating these things every week. I think it's on Monday you get all this, right? And then on Tuesday it's all generated, and that's how he's able to come up with all the percent completes that he reports on Wednesdays. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Just like, I keep bringing up 1,000 design objects. We need to remember that there's 1,000 of these things out there. And each one of them, when you do a functional spec, what's a typical functional spec? 5 pages? 10 pages? 10 to 15 pages. For one. And you're going to do 1,000 of them?
Thank you, Zeke. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I would just be interested in hearing the administration's response to the concerns over the approval for functional specs.
I agree that that's a very high priority right now. We only had 6 6 last week when we reported this, and now we've got the 3rd. So absolutely 2 key people were out that went to the conference and so forth. But we are meeting here with the executive and functional steering committee, and I've asked for that exact page, and Ken has them here. I'm going to basically tell the directors, you guys committed to the 3 days, and it's not happening, and what are you going to do to make it happen? Because these are going to just keep building and building and building. So we're going to, I'm very concerned about it as well. Like I said, in 1 week we tripled or quadrupled them, and we can't have that happen. So that'll be a topic for discussion with them when they come in here this afternoon. And all of those people in that room are the signers for these documents. They have to go through their subject matter experts, but eventually they go to that particular person to be able to sign it. They're responsible. I will make a comment that a couple of the ones that Zigger is talking about that are the longer term ones are ones that go across multiple departments and or the utilities in the municipality. Those documents tend to be a little bit more difficult as well. And I don't know which date is in there, but every person gets 3 days. So if you have 3 signers, it's going to take 9 days to get. They each have their own individual 3 to be able to review their docket and be able to do that. So when you're putting that together, it's just taking as if one signer, but there could be multiple 3s in there. And that's one reason why some of those might lag on a little bit longer, because everybody's taking their full 3 days to go through it.
Thank you, Mr. Fair, Mr. Evans, Mr. Middleton.
Going back to these tasks, so development work plan, 4,800 tasks, and you get about 20 weeks, so you get 240 done a week. Are there bite-sized chunks, or what's? The task could be huge, or it can be.
Sure.
Some tasks are only 2 hours. I mean, it might take 2 hours to do a specific task, or they might be taking all day or 2 days to be able to do a specific one. I mean, the project plan breaks them all down into the amount of time it's going to take to be able to do that. But combined as a whole, that's where the quantity comes from.
The reason there are that many, certainly, I mean, let's go back to if there's 1,000 items to work on, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, a good portion of those 1,000 are specifically listed in that work plan, which means that at a minimum, if you just assume there's nothing but just one line item for each of those objects, it's going to be 1,000 tasks. Okay, but each of those objects in that plan for the development plan says develop technical spec, program, unit test, and review and approve. I mean, so there's at least 4 steps for each line item.
And that's a key point here. So you do one, but you've got to do it 4 times as you go through the process. Each different person has to do their piece of it. You do the blueprint, the functional spec, technical spec, develop it. Well, the development team's got that line item there, but so did the functional team when they were doing the functional part of it. So that particular task is listed in multiple areas. As they get to their piece, then they're moving it through the process. And then you have to test it, and so forth as it goes through.
Thank you, Mr. Thurman.
Did we answer your question? We're okay?
Yeah, I just want to get some sense of
Okay.
how big these were.
Well, thank you, Mr. Evans and then Mr. Steele. Thank you.
Do we have a projected date on when the gap analysis will be done, and we'll know how many have been accepted by?
The mayor and myself and representatives of SAP have a call tomorrow to attempt to kind of at least, I don't want to say reach conclusion, but at least get on the path to conclusion. I'm hoping that in the next week or so, we will be able to firm up what, there's some negotiation that's going on right now, or that will begin tomorrow to be able to do that. I am concerned that we need to get it resolved quickly, because none of those tasks are incorporated in the plan, and we need to make sure that we've got them out there. We're burning weeks as we're going on through here. So I'm hopeful a week to at least resolve the direction we're on, and maybe some time period to actually do the contracts and change it. But we need to come to an agreement, and we're not there yet.
By our next, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Certainly by next month, the next month, third one that we're doing, or the one in June. If we're not done by then, the project's in trouble as far as from a timing perspective. We have to get these resolved pretty quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Thurman, Mr. Evans, Mr. Steele. You're fine? Thank you. Now's your opportunity to comment on the entire presentation, Mr. Thurman, if you'd like.
I think it was pretty decent. I would make some comments with regards to the invoicing. The mayor is very concerned about that as well. So that was one of the key topics that he brought up with the delivery executive, who's on site right now as well. We are it is to our advantage, so please look at it that way. We're holding our money longer and they're not getting the float. But I do understand Zig's comment that it is understating our actual spend to date. I can appreciate that. It also puts a huge burden on our administrative staff because the invoices just keep coming, and when you don't do 5 months worth and your weekly ones are still going, us getting caught up is going to be that's a big challenge for us. Another key point here, and I think Zig talked about it, about paying invoices. When we go live, it's going to be months and months before the invoices get finished up. It's a normal 60-day cycle, just if everything is perfect, before they get all their receipts from their consultants and so forth. Then if something's wrong, that's what delays these out. But whatever the go live is, the invoicing will be paid for months and months. And I'm still dealing with issues that happened in June and July of last year. We take it very seriously, this administration and this project team. We know how much money has been spent on this. We are scrutinizing every dollar to make sure that it meets our travel policy as well as that the employees have worked those hours. Unfortunately, that level of detail may not have been done in the past, but we're doing it and it takes a substantial amount of time. I'm actually going to be looking at getting another administrative helper to help catch us up on this as well as we go through there. But the invoicing issue is one of our 3 issues, along with the gap, along with something else in the project plan. So we're well aware of that, and highlighted those this week to the mayor, and he is actively pursuing all of those things.
Thank you, Mr. Thurman. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just one additional point that I'm wondering, that the training of the employees is going to be essential, and finding someone to do that training is probably going to be challenging. And I'm just hoping you're not planning to have someone that from the community that's currently involved in this and doing all the training.
I'm more than happy to give you more information on the training. So the person that was hired for OCM this week was the training lead. So we have that particular position filled by a local resource consultant who will be on the entire process. We will be hiring 5 training developers, and these are some of the ones that Greg was concerned about, making sure we get to them well in advance before we need them. They will create approximately 50 classes for different modules and so forth. We will be using a variety of different methods. Those will be online classes that people can go take. We're also going to be doing train the trainer type thing, where the subject matter experts in those areas will be actually delivering the training to be able to do that. In addition, the ER department has, I believe, recently hired a training person for the municipality, and one of their tasks or job responsibilities will be ensuring that the classes continue, when SAP leaves and so forth, that those classes can continue to be offered, updated, delivered. As new employees are coming online, we have to be able to do that. But we're going to be doing classroom settings, online and so forth, to be able to do all these kind of things. But well aware that there's a lot of training work that's going to be happening, and the training to the employees is going to be mainly around the February, March, April time period next year, which is also a very busy time for accounting because of the CAFR and so forth. There's no good time there's always work going on with the municipal. I mean, there's no good time to do it. You just have to kind of get the system done and then attempt to allow the employees to grace the feet to go out and do the training and those kind of things. But we have as a part of OCM, there's an extensive training plan with the resources that we need to allocate, and we're moving down that path.
Great.
Thank you.
Fine, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Harris or Mr. Bell, I can't pronounce your last name yet. Do you want to make a brief comment? Either one of you?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. How about you?
I just make a brief comment on the topic of the interfaces. The interface effort is very well under control. That's the first comment. The lead is somebody that I mentioned the last time we talked. There is a very commendable collaboration happening right now between the MIB, Fire, AWU. I'm going to call out Troy Swanson as a supporter. A lot of the knowledge that was built over the past experiences that the municipality has had with interfaces still exists within the municipality. The team is about 12 to 15 named resources within the municipality that all have been named to specific sets of interfaces. So the knowledge is there. The team is working very well together. And at this point, to me, there is not a huge resource risk in terms of the Muni's ability to deliver these based on the data that I have at hand right now. And with the knowledge that we have, there are some decisions to be made technically, which the team is making, but it is, yeah, I would like to share that.
Thank you, sir.
And then my last comment is on the data piece, which is kind of our red piece that's been delayed and so forth. And as they mentioned, they will be making it, they've done their work, or they're a couple of weeks of looking at what we have here, and we'll be getting that report this afternoon delivered to the functional steering committee and any executive steering committee members that want to vote. That's a critical document, because that'll show us if we have some problems, and what area do we have, and what do we need to do to be able to kind of get those areas ready here in the future. The one good thing I have heard already, that from an ER standpoint, they are green all the way across. They've been spending several years doing their data and cleansing it and getting it ready. And I haven't seen the report. I just got anecdotally told to me that they are green to go. But we have some challenges in some other areas as well. And that's a critical area. You notice the data conversion lead hasn't been hired. Well, we don't even know if we need one, or if we need 4 of them. We need to be able to, this report's really going to hopefully tell us where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, and then we at least have we can develop a strategy to how to get the data prepared in time. And that's the one big thing that's been hanging out there for quite a while. And I think once we have this report today, we will have a direction at least that we need to go, similar to what's all just made about the interfaces. We've got the people, we've got the direction. Now we're going to be able to focus our efforts on that and be able to deliver it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Durham. I just want to thank everybody for being here this afternoon. Thank you for the report. This meeting is adjourned.